Hi, my name is Jamaluddin. I am an independent researcher of spirituality and an author and a practitioner of mindfulness. So, welcome to my channel, and today we are going to see what is spiritual psychology, and we are trying to decode the science of spiritual psychology in Quran. So, the Quran is a spiritual scripture, and there are many other spiritual scriptures. All the great civilizations which flourished in the face of earth have made a science of spirituality with them. So if you look into all the great civilizations that existed in Egypt, India, in ancient Chinese, Mesopotamian, in Aztec, and throughout the world, all these civilizations flourished only because they were united and they were living with a science of spirituality, and they were connected with their nature, and they were thriving in it. So today we are going to see a science of spiritual psychology in Quran. So in this presentation we will see what is spiritual psychology, how is it a science, the core science of spiritual psychology. And after this you will be able to understand what is the core concept of spiritual psychology in Quran as a science, and you will understand the greatest error which forbids a person in understanding the science in it. And you will be fascinated to know how your own mind and soul is related and connected with your creator, the universe, or the universal consciousness. So, in order to understand what is spiritual psychology, you need to see what is psychology. So, psychology is the scientific study of mind and behavior, whereas spiritual psychology is the scientific study of mind and its relation with soul and consciousness. How we generate self awareness, what is soul, and what is universal consciousness, etc. So, psychology is, when it is a study of mind and behavior. In spiritual psychology, we study in depth the relation of mind with soul, consciousness, and all other entities which is related with it. So, how is spiritual psychology a science? For any stream of knowledge to be called a science, it should have these three principles. It should be observable. The experimentation should be possible, and there should have cause and effect principles. So once you look into the principles of spiritual psychology, it is observable. The advanced technology in the field of the neuroscience and other technology has allowed us to differentiate an agitated mind from a calm mind. And we have technology like electroencephalography, and through which scanning a brain neuron firing of a person can detect whether he is in calm state or whether he is agitated and thinking process. So it is surely observable. So experimentation is possible. So there are different ways through which you can achieve the goals of spiritual psychology, and you can get same results. So there are different paths to experiment for a person to reach the same result. For example, if you are looking for calmness, if you are looking for focus, if you are looking for peace and clarity, there are different ways like mindfulness, silence, meditation, yoga. So all these things are different paths to achieve a common goal, and experimentations are possible. And it has cause and effect principle. So for example, if you do something, there is a sure cause and there is a sure effect. For example, if you move out of your awareness, and if you keep your attention of thinking out of your awareness, it is for sure that you will start thinking, you will start automatic thinking process. So if you don't have awareness on your mind or awareness on your thinking process, it will start acting itself. So there is cause and there is effect. So in reality, the science of spiritual psychology is one of the greatest science, as we are learning about our mind, soul, and its relation with the power, the source, or the entity which created everything. So the greatest question that you can ask to understand spiritual psychology is, who am I, or what am I made of? So if you look into yourself, you can see this is a pictorial representation. So you can see for yourself a physical body, and the function of the physical body is to sense the information of the outside world. So you have five senses in your body through which you sense or receive information of the outside world. And you have a mind, and the function of the mind is to reason with the information which is given by your senses to make intelligence and understand. So you are very thorough about these two, physical body and mind. We normally use it. And we have one more entity which is called soul, which is one of the most important entity and which is least understood. So once when we go through spiritual science through scriptures like Quran, we can understand that, and Quran says that the function of our soul or nafs in Quran is to retain the records of understandings or ilm. So we know once we process the information that we receive from the senses and we create intelligence out of it and understand, this understanding as a data or as a record, we are retaining it in our soul. And another function of the soul is to, it is the origin, it is the place of origin of our awareness. So these retained recordings, the Quran says that these retained recordings or the ilm that we accumulate in our life, and that ilm that's stored in our soul is what our awareness, on the Quran, the Quranic term for awareness is zikr. So the awareness that we create, that awareness that you have as a person, the awareness that I have as Jamaluddin, just means that I have been understanding things from the day I was born until now. So Jamaluddin, the soul of Jamaluddin, has how Jamal walks, the understanding of how Jamal walks, how Jamal talks, how Jamal thinks. So every understanding, every data of, or every data of understanding that we have been retaining in ourselves, and these data of record that we have is what is called soul, and this is a deep science. So in this pictorial representation you can see that this is, if this is physical body, this is where we sense, and this is where our mind processes, and this is where the soul is. So all these entities of consciousness, I would like to call these, our physical body, mind, and soul, as entities of consciousness. So these three entities of consciousness are existing in a framework or a structure. So anything to exist, there should be a structure or frame in which it experiences. So what is consciousness? So we can understand that when we physically sense something, when we intellectually process and reason, when we become aware, all these are happening in our consciousness, and that is what actually is consciousness. And it is not that the consciousness is not that we create, actually it is an existing entity. The consciousness is an existing entity, and it is us, we evolve from it. So before we were born, consciousness is there. Even after we die, consciousness is there. And the science in spiritual psychology or spirituality says that after the death, it is a transformation. And it's a very deep subject, which is fascinating to know. And there is a link which connects everything, which connects our senses, our physical body, which connects our mind, which connects our soul with consciousness. And that is, as we said, the ilm or the understanding, the records of understanding. So once you see again, what is the standard model through which we understand? And it is, we have to sense. If you want to understand something, first we will initially sense the information through our physical body, and then reason with the information to make it intelligence, in mind and understand it. Once we understand it, this understanding as a record is retained in soul. So one example to know it is, if you observe yourself, you and myself understood how to walk when we were 2 years and 2 or 3 years age. We understood how to drive, we understood how to swim. So all these understandings are still there. And when we want to do it, when we want to walk, we are not calling, we are not remembering it actually. We are not calling for it. We are just doing it. The same way when we want to drive, we are just driving. We are not thinking about what to do now, what to do next. But just try to remember what you had for dinner before 3 days. So that is the difference. When you try to recollect what you had for dinner for 3 days, it's actually you need a process to do it. But once you understand something, it becomes your part. That is why you call your soul. So all these process that is happening in consciousness are just unlocking of the existing understanding, existing ilm in consciousness. So one of the most important attribute of consciousness, or the in the Arabic word consciousness, is Rabb. So the most important attribute of Rabb is he is Rabbil Alameen. So he is the possessor of all the understanding of the universe, and that is the consciousness. What is we call the science is looking for, and that is what is the quality of consciousness. So here actually we have a cycle of life where I can explain what is how the consciousness works. So this is the understanding that I have gathered through my own research into Quran and from my spiritual experiences. So the working of universal consciousness is, so if you start with our life when we were born, uh, we initially experience our outside world through our senses. That is physical information that we receive in our senses, and we give that to our information is passed to the mind, and this information is converted to an intelligence by reasoning, and we understand. Once we understand, we retain that understanding in the soul, and these retained understanding creates an experience, and that is awareness. We are going above all our records, and we are having an awareness from that. And this awareness actually is which the awareness is the only tool which allows us to see where we are existing. So once we are aware about the process and mechanisms with which we work, we will start experiencing the framework in which the awareness exists. So that is when we have an experience of the consciousness. The awareness is just, we are just unlocking the ilm or understanding. So this consciousness has a system. So every human being and everything in this world is existing in a universal consciousness, or what we call Allah, or the Arabic word is Allah, or the universal consciousness. And the quality, the attribute of universal consciousness is, it is all the understandings of the universe, Rabbil Alameen. And again, the physical sense that we experience is nothing but the unlocking of universal consciousness. So it is a cycle actually. So this cycle is happening throughout our life. So whatever is happening in our life is just the witness. So that is, I will explain the beauty of the concept of true Shahada. So La ilaha illallah, the true beauty of Shahada is actually, we are witnessing, when we are witnessing something only through our senses. It is nothing, just a witness of sense. When we are witnessing only in mind, it is just a mind process. But when we witness something through awareness, that means we involve our soul, we involve our mind, and we involve our physical senses. That is the time when we witness the consciousness or universal consciousness in which our awareness exists. So when we are truly aware from our soul, that means you are witnessing the framework. That is what it is meant by La ilaha illallah. I witness that there is no framework of experience other than the true, real framework, or the true existing universal consciousness. So that is the depth of the reality of Shahada. So, and if you may think, why majority of people are not able to understand the spiritual science as the message of spiritual science as a science. So the greatest error actually is they are trying to understand the spiritual science in Quran or in any other scripture, and they take this message only to the mind. So they are actually bringing down the science, and whereas in reality it is a science of awareness, soul, consciousness, which are beyond mind. So if you are trying to understand soul consciousness and the universal consciousness through your mind, it is just like trying to uh, if you're trying to understand it only through belief, only through your mind, it is just like trying to think with our nose. Even though nose is our sense organ, but it doesn't have the ability to think. If you want to think and reason, you have to use your mind. So if you want to become aware of the framework in which you exist, it is not the work of your mind, it is the work of your soul and awareness. So we won't be able to become aware of higher consciousness with the mind, and mind doesn't have the ability. So unless and until you know what is your soul and you become aware of it, that is only when you understand the science of spirituality. And if we don't know what is our soul, how are we going to build a good soul? And how will you control your mind when we don't know the tool with which you can control it? How we will ever be in peace when our own mind and soul are working against us? And this is the only reason people are not able to understand the science of spirituality. And they are not able to experience it with their soul, their complete self. They only experience it either in their senses or in their mind. Either they will go for rituals or they go for beliefs. They don't go for experiences. So how to experience it? There are many ways through which we can experience our higher consciousness. Various traditions have developed different approaches to achieve it. Like yoga, which try to access our higher self through sharpening of physical body senses. There are meditations, different meditations, which try to access through control of mind. And if you look into Chinese traditions like Qigong, which tries to achieve it through harnessing the energy of prana. So if you look into Quran, the science of spiritual psychology, spiritual science in Quran, it tries in a different method. And the method used by Quran is to achieve it through making people experience the ilm or the records of understanding in their awareness. And it allows us to know the working mechanism of our soul and consciousness and to become aware of it. So the only condition that you need to have to achieve and experience it is you should be ready to use your senses, reasoning and awareness without corrupting the standard process, without judging or without influencing what you are understanding. So there are many practices and processes explained in Quran which will allow us to better understand the mechanisms of mind, soul and consciousness, thereby achieving peace and calmness. I have been trying my best to decode this science from Quran using some of the tools which I came across and from my own experiences in my life. So I'll show you some of the tools which I have been using to understand Quran. So in my life, I had some issues with which I need to find solution, which I had to have peace in mind. So I've been referring for truth, always going behind truth, and whenever I came across something which is not true or reality to me, I have been filtering it. So I have been using for last many years this complete Quran, and I've been going word by word. So this is how I try to understand the Quran. So this is actually word by word. So uh, I use the traditional classical meaning of every word. I don't go for any influence from traditions or any other secondary sources. I go with uh, the classical meanings from lexicons. So, for example, uh, the word ism, it is not just a name, but it is a distinguishing mark, or which signifies the reality. So just like this, there are thousands and thousands of words which are actually corrupted because of influence from outside. So I have been referring that, and I have worked for a long time, and I have been tagging things actually where it happens. So this is the tag that I make. So it's attributes of supreme being, so features of individual consciousness. So I have decoded all my understanding, and I have recorded it. So now I want to share this, and so I want to share my understanding with people, and I've been trying my best to understand and decode this. So after knowing it, I'm practicing as a spiritual psychologist, or uh, to help anyone to find calmness and peace in life. So if you are looking to find peace and calmness in life, you can consult me to use the practices which I have understood from Quran, and which I have applied in myself. So one of the greatest message that I have understood so far is the true signs that exist in Quran is the necessity of our time, and it is the thing which will bring peace, the reality, the peace, and much required understanding between people. So if you are interested to learn and practice the science of spiritual